Aloha. Today's episode is brought to you by the Western Extension Risk Management Education Center, USDA NIFA, and the University of Hawaii College of Tropical Ag and Human Resources, and the Livestock Extension Group, as well as the University of Nebraska-Lincoln Center for Ag Profitability.
Aloha, welcome to the Livestock Bala'au, a podcast aimed to provide educational support, information, guidance, and outreach to our livestock stakeholders in Hawaii and the U.S. We are your hosts, Mele Oshiro and
Shannon Sand. Today, we're going to be speaking with Randy Sainer. He's an extension educator in the area of beef at the University of Nebraska, who also has an expertise in the areas of sheep and goats. He is also a certified animal scientist in the areas of goat and beef production. So we're going to speak with Randy a little bit today about small ruminant herd health. And yeah, I'm just very excited because I feel like it's always a challenge to find someone who does small ruminant, and it's such a popular topic.
It is. And I think we have a lot of small ruminant producers here in Hawaii and all over that. I feel like it's a kind of smaller livestock species. And a lot of times people start with poultry and then they move on to sheep or goats. So thank you very much, Randy, for joining us today. We are very excited to talk with you. And I don't know if you want to just kind of start with a little bit of your background and some information about your position.
I'm an extension educator here at the University of Nebraska. Actually, it started with the University of Missouri when I worked there. I went to some trainings for sheep and goat production because we had a lot of sheep and goats in that state. And I was in the top 3 counties for the state. So I had 1, 2, and 4, I think. So I've been going to trainings ever since and kind of developed my expertise in both goats and sheep production. Probably even a little better in goats than sheep, but still do quite a bit of work with sheep. The big thing you guys have to deal with, parasites is a big issue, and sheep and goats in Hawaii, I'm sure have that hamancha or the famancha, the barber pole worm, which is a big issue it sucks a lot of blood.
I was going to say, Mele just did certification a few months ago with one of her assistants, I think, right?
Yeah. We did a workshop and got some producers FAMACHA trained. That's a huge one here. I think people face it all over, not just here in Hawaii, but just because of our climate. We have, I feel like, a little bit of a extra impact of that here.
Yeah, just because of your humidity and the wet, that those eggs go out, they hatch, and when the grass is wet with dew on it, they crawl up, and the animal eats that larva, and then they cause problems. And one worm can suck a cc of blood a day, and you think about
that's a lot.
Thousands of worms in there. You could become anemic really fast with both your sheep and goats. There is some breeds that are more resistant to the barber pole worm, and we can talk about that later on. But there are some, but in general, most breeds are going to still have trouble with it. There's just some that seem to have a little more resistance. The thing on that is using the FAMACHA system, which is where you look at the eyelid and see how pink it is. If it's really white, that says the animal is deficient in oxygen or deficient in hemocrat, which is what carries the oxygen, because the worms have taken all these red blood cells away from the parasites or from the goats for the parasite, and so they become very anemic, and so there's some things you can do besides that feeding a high protein ration, a high protein ration, some soybean meal or some kind of protein meal, which helps rebuild those red blood cells for those animals. So that's a good thing you can do, especially in areas where you have a lot of problems with it. Nebraska is pretty dry, but a few years ago we had a lot of rain. We're getting that this year, and I had a lot of calls on parasites. So they're there. If the environment's right, it can just make it worse. So that's the big thing about both sheep and goats. And I think goats are more affected than sheep on the parasite issue, and you can lose them very fast. I had a lady call me when I was in Missouri, and she said, "Randy, I'm losing goats." And I said, have you got the wormer that we talked about? And she said, "Yeah." I said, "I'll be out to worm today. We're going to go worm a bunch of them because we're going to get those. We need to find those that are a problem." So we just wormed the ones that were the issue. Guess what? She never lost another goat.
Oh, that's great.
She had lost 2 or 3, but that's the key when you see it, you got to get on it right away because you'll lose them fast if you're not careful.
Yeah. I wonder with that high protein diet, like I wonder if mac nut cakes, I don't know, is that high enough protein, Melody, you think, or no?
What
I
protein level is it?
I know it's
I
really
think
high in fat and probably delicious.
yeah. I want to say they're like 18%, but I'm not positive about the mac nut cake. But sourcing protein here on the island, like in meal form, is probably limited in a
Yeah.
sense. Majority of our stuff is shipped in. So like as far as like available stuff, a lot of folks have used a mac nut cake, and I'd have to look, but
Yeah.
that would be one opportunity. It does have a kind of a higher fat level too.
And it doesn't take a lot. Doesn't
Yeah.
take a lot.
And someone else had asked me about, like, I know that some people have used like red cell. Is that still something that's
Yes.
available for sheep and goats?
You can in some places you can get it where they give
Mhm.
it basically a transfusion of red cells into the bloodstream. Yes, I have heard producers do it. It's fairly expensive, but it kind of depends on your vet if they've got the availability to get that. And I don't know if you can buy it without a vet's permission, but I think that's one thing I don't know. But I do know people that's done
Yeah.
it, and they've saved goats before because you're basically adding red blood cells back to their
Right.
their bloodstream.
Yeah, and there's all the change with the new antibiotic and over the counter stuff. So I'm not just sure where that one lies on that.
Yeah, that's a good
regulation.
question.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't know. I should know that, but I don't. But I do know people that's used it and it's worked. And sometimes they wait too long and the animal still dies. So,
Yeah.
that's the thing. When you have parasites, you need to get on it. So you need to be checking those eyes and making sure. And the other thing is don't graze the grass real short because it has to crawl up that grass leaf. And if it's 8 or 10 inches tall, it's a little harder for it to get up there than it is if it's 2 or 3.
Yeah.
Oh, that's good.
I would say a lot of times when we see producers having problems, it's usually started from that. They've either had really, either limited area that they can't move animals quick enough. And so they get too short in where they are, or just too much in one area, right? So they're just getting too close to the surface of
Overgrazed a little.
yeah, getting
Yeah.
overgrazed and getting into some of those more dirty areas of the pasture. So
Yeah, and that's one thing I will say. If you're starting a goat operation, or sheep, either one, start small, grow the
Okay.
size of your operation gradually so you kind of learn these things. And do not get more animals than your pasture facilities and labor can support. Because they have 2 babies, not 1 a lot of times. You can double your herd in a year if you're not careful.
yeah, and I think that's the biggest thing I stress to people, when they call or ask questions about, how many animals. I mean, that's the first question you want to do is what can you support? Not just your land, but you yourself. Is it just you? And a lot of times people find that that's the whole labor issue is what leads up to them having parasite issues or other things that go wrong in the herd. So it's a very important part of your plan.
Yeah, and so you know what you can do for a cow.
Yeah.
Goat's about 150 to 200 pounds. A cow's if you figure an animal unit, that's 1,000 pounds.
Yeah.
But cows now weigh more like 1,200 or 14.
1,400.
So you can take that, and that tells you how many number of goats you can have in that area. Now, if you already have cattle, you can actually add a goat or a ewe per cow. And you can the cows will vacuum some of those sheep and goat worms up, and the sheep and goat will vacuum some of those cow worms up. So there's some real benefit to using multi-species if you've got the ability. We've had producers that had like 1,000 cows and they got 1,000 ewes, and they never had any trouble with not having enough grass because they eat enough different stuff. So if you look at goats, they're going to eat a large percentage of theirs is going to be woody plants, and a sheep is going to be more the forbs, the flowering, weedy, broadleaf type plants. So, and that's why you can add that without making a change.
Yeah.
That's an important thing. I think Shannon and I talked about that, about multi-species grazing. And, a few people have asked, do you have any tips on people wanting to sort of start to incorporate new species into their herd if they have beef cattle? Or
because that's, I think, been a discussion. I'm kind of laughing at it because I had a discussion with you, Mele, and then I think Randy and I had a discussion later on because it's of interest apparently all over the place, I feel like right now. Because I feel like I also talked to some folks from, I want to say, like from Wyoming and Utah State. And like, again, it seems to be becoming much more of an interest for people in terms of, they want some information about that.
Yeah.
So if you do that, you want to imprint those sheep and goats with those cattle. We had
Oh.
one of our educators, they buy yearling cattle and they buy some lambs.
Mm-hmm.
And they were having trouble because the lambs would never stay with the cattle and they would crawl out. So I said, you need to imprint them first. So I said, you need to go in, you need to put them together and you need to feed them. Well, the calves were kind of rough on the sheep at first, she said. They were a little bit rough on them. But she said, once they got used to them, when they turned them out, they stayed together. But you got to feed them together for about a week. Some
Okay.
people say longer than that, but she said a week worked pretty good for her. And she said when they turned them out to pasture, then the sheep and the cattle kind of stayed together, and the cattle do more protecting of them and stuff. But if you don't imprint them, what will happen is that the goats will stay in one spot, and the sheep or the cattle will stay
Cows
in
will go somewhere else.
So that's really
Yeah.
an important thing if you're thinking of that.
Yeah, and I guess that's so the amount of time you take to imprint them is probably gonna really depend on the age of the animals as well,
Yes.
and kind of the area that they're in. So is it better to have sort of a larger, I guess, the size of the pen too, right? Because if they can in the imprinting pen get away from each other easily, they're not gonna naturally want to be together, right?
That's correct. That's correct. And that's why you get them out in range, they kind of separate. But if you got them in a smaller pen where they have to be together, they get used to each other, then they kind of and they'll even feed them a lot of times together in a bunk just to kind of get them used to that. But you're right, it's got to be a small enough pen that they got to be around each other.
We did have someone back a while back did some work on livestock bonding and sort of to use it as a security in the pastures, because we do have a lot of attacks from wild dogs and things on our smaller ruminants. So having them bonded up to some of the larger species just gives them a little bit more protection.
That makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I recommend guard animals too. So I mean, you can even you use a guard dog or a donkey or a llama will help you, because sheep and goats are a really good prey for dogs, coyotes, small predators, because they're small themselves. And so if you can get the imprinting of the cattle, plus if you've got a guard animal with them like a donkey, I've known people that lost calves and they got a donkey and that stopped it. The donkey was running the coyotes off.
Mm-hmm.
But and I don't know if it's coyotes or dogs, but he said it solved the problem. So even they'll even help with cattle too if they're being predatored on.
Yeah, I've heard that about donkeys. So I've only seen I think one or two on the island though. I don't.
There was a couple other people that have. There's not.
I've seen a couple, but not a whole lot. Yeah,
like with other herds, but they have their own herds. But they did get rid of, or I should say, rehomed a bunch of the wild donkeys and burros that were on our island down in the Waikoloa area. There's still some there, but they didn't get them all.
Yeah.
A female's a better one because they're more motherly, because they'll kind of be around that baby and they'll keep that coyote away.
Yeah.
Versus a male. Males kind of get ornery sometimes, but anyway, so that's a big thing. The other thing, if we talk about health, is just nutrition. Yeah. Nutrition is really important with goats. They're going to find the higher quality stuff just like cows do, but they're going to eat a lot of the leaves off of your shrubs. They like shrubbery. They like woody plants.
Yeah.
And so if you've got a lot of woody plants, goats really work well. But if you've got a lot of weedy type weeds that are more broadleaf, the flowering forbs is what I'll say, sheep probably do better for those. And so depending on what you've got, it can make a big difference.
I see. That's surprising because I always think of goats as like the animal that will eat literally anything. It's like I could be very wrong, but I just think of my neighbor's goats, and I was like, I swear they would eat anything. Well,
they like a lot of stuff that other animals don't like, so that's the advantage of them.
Like the little kids couldn't leave any sort of plastic toy out in the yard or anything because the goats would try and eat it. So, but it's very interesting to hear that they're actually quite picky. It sounds like a little bit. Yeah.
If you give them a choice, they're going to go to woody plants first. They will eat grass if they have to, but they would rather go to the woody plants first. Yep. So, if you think about goat and sheep production for small ruminants, that's your biggest cost is feed. And the other thing about sheep and goats, they don't like moldy feed. They can have some disease issues with mold. And even I've seen them get it with moldy leaves when we had a lot of rain and the leaves molded in the fall. In Missouri, we would get some problems there. So mold doesn't work well. And that's why, like, if you use silage or anything like that, you got to be really careful with small ruminants with that.
So they won't eat it at all, or they will kind of if they have to, and then it could cause gut problems, or like they could get sick from it, or
they'll eat it. It's just the molds that they put out chemicals and stuff that can make them sick. Yes.
Oh, okay.
And even more so than a cow, they tend to handle it better than a sheep or goat. Yeah.
Is it just because of the multiple chambers in the cow, or
I don't know? Same thing in a ruminant. As they're small ruminants, they have a ruminant too.
Oh, that's true. You're right.
Yeah. It just seems like mold is an issue more with sheep.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
What's so a lot of folks using grazing under orchard crops with smaller ruminants with sheep and goats. We've have heard some about toxicities with like avocado. Another one that someone just talked to me, it's not an orchard crop, but it just came to my head because talking about toxicity is hairy vetch. And do you have any experience with that, or what's your thoughts on some of the orchard crop grazing?
The vetch, I've never seen one, but I know hairy vetch can be a problem if they get too much of it. The big thing, we even had some of the poisonous plants. I had a guy that actually grazed them with his goats, and it caused some deformities in his kids, but he was trying to get rid of it for his cows. So he was willing to sacrifice a few of his goats, but it didn't kill the mother, just the baby was mature or was deformed when they were born. So those are some things. But yeah, goats can die from poisonous plants. But they tend to detoxify things much faster than a cow. So they can handle stuff that cattle can't. And that's why with wormer, when we deworm an animal, it's about 2.5 times what we would give it for a cow dose. Because they detoxify it so fast, you got to get it in their system at a large quantity to get rid of that worm. Just something to think about.
So can we go back to nutrition a little bit? I was like, just because I don't know much about it with like meat goat nutrition versus like sheep nutrition. Like, what I'm just gonna ask again, what is the difference besides, one is gonna want more of the woody and the other is gonna want
more of the forbs.
More of the forbs. Okay.
Yeah, it's more of a flowering big leaf type plant.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
It's non-woody. The woody is more that type.
Yeah.
So sheep, you gotta be really careful of the copper.
Okay.
So goats have twice the requirement of copper than sheep. Sheep, you'll die if you feed goat mineral or cattle mineral to a sheep, you'll kill it.
Oh, that's good to know.
But you can feed sheep mineral to a goat and it will live.
Okay.
It just sometimes you can get a little bit of a deficiency if you're not careful, but you're still better off if you've got them running together to feed sheep mineral. Don't feed goat mineral.
Oh, okay. That's good to know.
If you're running goats with cows, you can use the cattle mineral. The goats will be fine.
Okay. But
the sheep will die. So you don't want to do that with sheep. So those are some things that are really important. I think that are different.
Yeah, because I know Melleves has done some stuff on copper. Copper has talked a little bit about copper supplementation before and has worked with some producers and stuff about some of that, at least in cattle. So I was like, that's good to know, because there's a lot of people that have sheep. I feel like
that's a very good point to bring up. If you start to think about multi-species grazing, you have to look at nutritional requirements across the different species you have in there, make sure that you don't, like Randy said, don't use minerals for your cows with your sheep, because it can be very detrimental to them. So very important thing. And I mean, there's a lot of benefits of the multi-species grazing, I think, but you do also have to have a good understanding of their nutritional requirements when getting started in something like that. And just to be sure you're not introducing any problems that way.
Well, and if you look at sheep, they're kind of top-down grazers. They're browsers. Like I said, they prefer woody plants, shrubs. They tend to select grass over clover, where sheep will go more for clover, legume type stuff. They like to graze fence lines. So goats are going to go out to the fence, try to get through it, of course, graze that, and then they're going to come in. Where cattle are going to go in and then go out. So there's some other advantages there because you got them grazing in different areas, right? And they like high places. they're way more tolerant to tannins than or bitter compounds than either sheep or cattle, but sheep will eat some of those. So those are some things to think about when you're raising small ruminants.
So like I know like cows require a certain percentage of like body weight, availability for water. Like what about smaller ruminant animals like goats? Is there anything particular? Is there something you have to watch out for?
So goats about 1 to 1.5 gallons of water for each 4 pounds of dry matter consumed, and they're going to eat about 2.5 to 3% of their body weight. Really similar to sheep too. They can manage water pretty good because they were developed in deserts, right? Both sheep and goats kind of. And so, but that they like still water. They don't like flowing water. They don't like to graze around water because of the parasites they've learned over time. So if you've got a nice still water source for them, they're going to be better. And in the Bible you hear that, by still waters. That's the reason they say that, because they like still water.
So you want we're talking about nutrition now. Different growth stages of the animals are going to impact them as well. So we know at maintenance they're 2-3% of their body weight. During lactation, that goes up a little bit.
It does about 3 to 3.5. But when they're pregnant, before they have their baby, you can get pregnancy toxemia because they can't eat enough, especially got twins, because it pushes on that rumen and gives them less to eat. So when they're in that stage, you've got to give them a higher protein, higher energy diet because they can't eat as much. And the other thing about pregnancy toxemia is we don't want them too fat before they get into that stage, because we seem to have problems with fat use. And I suppose, again, that could be because it's shoving on that rumen some if they're fatter. But you want to be careful of that. You don't want them too fat before they kid. You don't want them real thin either, but you definitely don't want too thin or too fat. You could get pregnancy toxemia really easy in either sheep or goats. So it's just something to be really careful with. And goats and sheep can get fat because you wean that baby, you wean it pretty young, and they have quite a time when they're gestating. They have more time. And so you can use really low quality forage early gestation, but late gestation, they need high quality stuff. So you got to adjust for that.
So one thing we always recommend too is folks looking at body condition scores. I'm not the best at it, and I feel like sheep's always a little bit harder if they've got some wool and whatnot on them. Do you have tips on looking at body condition scores in small ruminants, Randy?
So I like to see them get their hands on, feel for that spine, feel for those ribs on a lamb in space, so you can see it on a goat more so. But if you feel one that's really, I had a person tell me once, use your wrist and go over and feel the bumps in your wrist there. That's telling you that lamb is too thin. Okay. If you go and take your finger and just go right over where it meets here, and you feel like that's just probably pretty darn close to what you want. And if they feel fatter than that, then that's telling you they're too fat. So you can kind of use your hand as a gauge. So, and both sheep and goats are the same. I mean, but I like to get your hands on them. I think you can do a better job of body condition scoring with hands. We want about a 3 to a 4. A 5 is a real fat one.
Yeah.
And a 3 would be about right. 3 to 4 before they kid. They're going to lose some weight down to that. They might even lose down to a 2, but you don't want them to get less than a 2. And then you got to have them back up to that 3.5 when they get ready to kid again. But you don't want them as a 5. Because that's when you get pregnancy toxemia.
Yeah, our station goats are a little bit pushing 5.
Yeah, some big boys is what you're saying.
And they can do that. They can do that pretty easy because if you depending on when you wean, they can really get in the flesh good. Some of them are very just good keepers. They don't take a lot.
Yeah, and these guys are just they're for demonstration and for use for us, and don't get bred. So yeah, so they're kind of the pet herd right now.
So if they're not bred, you don't have to worry about pregnancy toxemia.
Yeah.
Good there.
Well, we talked a lot about nutrition. Can we take a couple minutes to talk sort of about health stuff, and particularly as far as like the different growth stages, right, of the animals, when we want to think about doing stuff like the vaccinations for lambing or kidding? And at what point do we want to do that? And when should we be thinking about vaccination stuff as well for like our breeding herds?
Sheep and goats have similar health disease issues. Okay. Internal parasites would be one, right? Coccidiosis would be another one. That could be when they're nursing their mom. That could be when they're on pasture. Sometimes we get an outbreak because the environmental conditions are just right for us. And in that case, if you got coccidiosis, you can use a coccidiostat in the water, or you could. So I like people to feed Bovatec or Ruminant a mineral, depending on the species you have, because one's Bovatec, one's Ruminant. And I think it's Ruminant sheep and Bovatec goats, but maybe it's the other way around. I get them mixed up. But anyway, that'll kind of help eliminate a little bit coccidiosis if you feed it continuously. But sometimes even doing that, you still have to use a coccidiostat, which Corid or something like that in the water is probably the best way. And you can tell that a lot of times by blood on their, bloody stools and so forth, or you'll just see them going down in condition. Sometimes we think it's internal parasites, and it may actually be coccidiosis. So you kind of got to watch that, because they're going to get anemic with coccidiosis too, because you're losing blood out of the intestine. So Clostridial diseases, that would be type C and D, overeating and tetanus. A lot of times we're going to give that before we castrate any of the males, okay? Because you can get it there. We're also going to give it to the female. And a lot of times we'll like to give it to her like 4 weeks before she kids, somewhere in there, develop immunity in herself. And then she's going to give that baby milk that's got that immunity in it. So that's how ruminants work. They put more of their immunity through milk. They don't do a lot of cross transfer of immunity. It's more through the milk. So the other one would be sore mouth. Sore mouth works sometimes as a vaccination. I don't like to use it unless you have a really big outbreak, but it's one of those that humans can get it. So you want to wear gloves, be really careful. But if you start seeing sores around their mouths and stuff, that means you probably got it. And sometimes we'll see that people get it when they go to shows and stuff. They'll bring it back with them, or you'll bring in an animal that's got it and you don't realize it, and it shows up with it.
And you can vaccinate with once you see symptoms already with SARMA?
I've had people do it to kind of control how bad it is. And it kind of helps with that, but just be real careful. The ones that are really bad, I've had people use mouthwash and different things on them to try to help, and eventually they'll get over it. They'll build immunity, but it just looks ugly and it's not fun when they got it. And their production goes way down, because even the babies, they don't like to nurse the moms because their mouth is sore. So it's one of those, but you can bring it in more than anything. CL would be another one. It's caseous lymphadenitis. Most of the time with CL, you're gonna have a lot of abscesses inside the animal, or you'll even see it on the outside. But just because they got an abscess doesn't mean they have CL. So you got to be really careful with that, because it usually comes where the animal's lymph nodes are, is where the CL will come. You can test for CL. You can bring it into your herd really easily. It's one of those that I don't know if you can vaccinate for it. I don't know if it'll help that much, but just controlling it. If you do get some lesions, make sure you break them open, cut them open, put it in a plastic bag and burn it, and keep that animal away from the rest for a while till you get it all healed up. And so that's the key is making sure you take that out in a plastic bag, use gloves, burn it, keep the animal away from the rest, so that, because that fluid, when it breaks, actually gives it to the others too. So it can. Foot rot's another one you can bring in from people. It's a challenge when you got wet conditions, right? Foot rot can be an issue. You can run them through a foot bath, copper oxide, but do a good job of trimming. Those kind of things is gonna help you with that. But it's one of those, you just try not to bring it in your herd. And then if you do, you're gonna do some foot baths and get them over it. That's the other thing you're gonna do. Urine calculi would be another one. That is where if you feed too much phosphorus or calcium phosphorus ratio is off. Goats are really bad, especially if you castrate them really young. We used to get this in our 4-H goats some. If you castrate them young, a goat's reproductive tract does not grow once you castrate it. So we always waited until we weighed them in and castrated them that day, and try to make sure that they were big enough, right? So they wouldn't get stones. Some once in a while they still got stones, but an acidifier in the feed will really help you with that. Ammonium chloride, a lot of people use, but they got to eat it. They don't really like the taste that very good, so you got to kind of hide it in there. And
there's some feed, I think, now that also already has it sort of mixed into some of the growers now for the meals.
And if you're a 4-H kid, I would feed that kind because it's going to maybe save you from having those. I knew a guy that used liquid. He drenched them with it when he really had it bad, and he saved the goat because it was pretty bad, and he was able to save it. Basically, it just breaks those stones up, it acidifies the urine. So, but those are issues you could see, and then of course rabies is another one you could see. Just from wildlife getting them. We don't see that a lot, but that's one thing you want to watch for.
I hope we never get to see that.
I was gonna say, I think Hawaii is actually one of the few states that's rabies free.
Floppy kid would be another one. Floppy kid syndrome. It's kind of a bacterial issue. It's usually your fastest growing, nicest one, and it's a bacterial. Sometimes you can get them over it with antibiotics. Sometimes you can't. But we see that some. OPP would be in sheep. Okay. And that's one where the mother can get mastitis in her bag. She don't milk, and you have to have lambs that you keep. So, and it's a disease, and it's a long-term like pneumonia, but it also goes to mastitis in the bag, what you call blue bag, where the animal just quits producing milk, so baby can't get anything. So that's a good thing to look for after you wean. Once their bags have kind of went down, make sure you call those animals because they can really cause you issues. If you like doing bottle lambs, then I guess it's not as big an issue, but most of us don't like that. So those are kind of some of the ones that I'm thinking of. Ketosis is that pregnancy disease. So when you smell that ketone sweet smell, if you got it, you may, you're in trouble. If you did, you can smell it. So it's one of those. You can try to drench them with some products, but it doesn't always work.
So there's one other thing I think another thing that I see commonly happening is bloat with the small ruminants. And so I've taught a few people how to tube their own, and really you're at that point, if you're going to tube them, they've usually, by the time they've found them, there's it's life or death at that point. So, some people get too afraid of doing gastric tube. But at that point, I kind of tell them, you're either going to save them or not. So you must as well try and pass that tube. You can't get it wrong. You'll smell it. Yeah. If you got it right.
Yeah. Yeah. You can, when you tube them, you can tell if there's air coming out of it and it's not smelly, it probably is the lungs. You can probably see that. But in generally, you're not going to hurt. If they're bloated, you want to save them. I've tubed a lot of cattle too and saved some of them because they were so bad. And so, and it's not too hard. Just kind of let them swallow it down there and make sure kind of in the corner of their mouth, you take it down. But a lot of people will just listen when they get the tube in. If it's really bloated, it's probably going to come out. You probably won't have to listen, but you can kind of listen if it's breathing. So,
yeah.
So there used to be products before that you could even drench or add into feed. I hear people using baking soda. What's your thoughts on things like that?
There is some products that you can use for clover bloat, because clover bloat has that foaminess to it. And that's one you could use. Baking soda, I know people use it. I've not heard of either one way or another whether it works. I've not seen any research on it, put it that way. So
same.
But those clover bloat ones, you can get those in blocks, or you can get it in liquid and feed it. In New Zealand they use it a lot. I can't think of the name of it. That's why I haven't said the name of it right now. But it's one of those that you can use, and it'll help. It'll help. But if it's certain kinds of bloat, it may not. Like grain overload's one that probably isn't going to help. And that would maybe the baking soda would actually help a little in the pH in the rumen, but it's not. I don't know if it's going to help get that bloat down that much.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
But it could help with the pH because of the soda.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm not that most people have told me, oh, they've just, put it on their feed, and I can't see that my sheep or goats would eat it off the feed, and how much they would actually, if they would actually consume enough, I don't know. But yeah, so that's not something that I would typically say. But yeah, I think learning, if you have issues with bloat, if you had it once, it's a good skill to learn if you can tube your animals.
Yes.
Get somebody that knows how to do it and show you how to do it, because I think at some point you're going to either need it, and
especially if you got a lot of legumes in your pasture,
Yeah.
which I would assume you guys would have more because
Yeah.
of the weather. The other thing is, if you see one that's a problem, that might be a good one to call.
Yeah.
I know a producer that had he used alfalfa for his Charolais cattle.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, Randy, we didn't have a lot of trouble with bloat because I got rid of the ones that had trouble. And he said, we never had any more trouble. So you could kind of select for it a little bit. The other thing we can talk about, let's talk about the classes of wormer. There's like 3 different classes. So like if you use Safeguard and it's not working and you use Panicure, it's the same family. It's the
so it's not gonna if
the
it's
benzendazoles. I can't even say it, but yeah, it's not going to work. So Synthetic and Valvazin, all those are in that category, right? So those are, and then they've got the mendazole pyridine, which is the Lavasol, the Tramasol, the Rumatil, and T. So that's another class. So let's say you've used that one for a long time, you build up resistance, then you want to go to a different class and make sure you get in the different class of drugs, not a different drug that's the same family. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so the microlides would be your like Dectomax, Epronex, Cydectin, Ivamax, some of those. And we've really built up resistance in small ruminants. You can build it up fast. So you got to really be careful how you do that.
So is it kind of like a rotation thing you should potentially do if you have to do so that there's less likelihood of it for those different generational life cycles of those worms?
So I would I would use it. Either use it until it quits working, and how you know it quits working is if you see a lot of, you worm them and you take an egg count, and there's a lot of eggs that are still alive after a week or so, then you probably have resistance. You need to switch to a different one. You can switch, but I would not switch. I would try to avoid switching, like in 1 year, do 2 or 3 if you don't have to, because you're going to build resistance in all 3. There is some things, if you've got really bad parasite resistance, where they'll have you use all 3 families. But remember, when you do that,
that sounds like that would be very
you can,
that would hurt the gut, right?
Yeah, well, it seems to work, but you get 99.9% of the worms, but you get that 10th out there that's going to be resistant to all 3. So you want to be really careful. Now, if one's really bad, and you also have to be careful about how much you give an animal that's really weak, right? So, but there have been doing that in some instances, and they've been able to save the animal. But doing that a lot, I think, can build a lot of resistance if you're not careful.
I think that's the one thing when we talk about parasite management and stuff in the herd, it's not just go out and deworm your animals. Go out, look at your animals. You can use other tools, doing body condition scores, the FAMACHA, fecal egg counts, and looking at those reduction tests and things to kind of see what you really need and treat the ones that need to be treated. I think to say that's probably one of the important things too. Yeah, which is about 10 to 15% of the herd. So, and the other thing is, it's highly heritable, like 0.5 or somewhere in there. So, get rid of those you have problems with all the time. Let's build resistance through genetics too. And that's another way.
That's probably the best way to do it too. And honestly, I wonder if, again, I take it from an econ side, if it's just more economically efficient because you're having to use, less wormer, less medicine, and it's just, healthier for the animal in general, right?
Also, there's copper wires that people use in a roster. I use this a lot, but I have producers that use it. So they put it in a capsule
Mm-hmm.
Now, you got to be really careful with sheep, but in a goat, it doesn't seem to make a difference. And you can reduce you reduce the amount of eggs that are produced. It doesn't kill the worms, just reduce so you don't put as much eggs out in the pasture.
Mhm.
And then there's also a fungus now that
Yeah.
helps kill worms that you can use
Cool.
too. So we're getting a few more options, but I mean, they're not 100%, but they'll help.
Right. I didn't even know about the fungus. I see Melee's like, yeah, I knew about that.
Yeah,
I'm
I can't
like, I
recall the
had no
name of the
idea.
product. It's not technically like available here yet in Hawaii because of our Department of Agriculture has to like sign off on us bringing it in
Right.
because it's a fungus,
Fungus.
right?
Yeah.
Right.
So,
Right.
um,
And I think people are probably getting it from Australia. I don't know if they can get it from anybody in the U.S. So,
yeah, I
but
hope
I guess they have done some research in parts. There has been some research done where they used that and Famancha, thinking maybe it would help. And it really didn't it wasn't better using the two versus just the one or the other.
Yeah.
According to the research I read, that was just a recent article that somebody put out. So I think I read that on wormx.com is a
Yep.
great place for people to go. I use it all the time. So
do I. And we did have Susan showing on here at one point to talk about some stuff. So,
she's
yeah.
been I've had her talk at my stuff too. So
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, that's very good information. I don't know. Is there anything else, Randy, you want to share? I mean, I could ask you questions all day long about small ruminant stuff. So, we could be here forever. But I think that, the important parts of management plans is looking at health, nutrition of the animals, and understanding what I think you can have right in the area. But
rotation's good. We talked about that a little bit. Don't graze your pastures too short. Rotate if you can. And I think adding another species if you can will help you kind of vacuum some of those eggs up so you don't have as much parasite issues. And then, if you're marketing goats, get the ethnic calendar. It's really an important thing because that's when people eat goat a lot. And so you can look at, you've got you've got Easter for Eastern Greek and Western both. And you can get Cinco de Mayo. A lot of Hispanics eat it then. Independence Day is another one. Any of your Caribbean holidays. Ramadan, the start of Ramadan for Muslims is a time where they're going to want 45 to 120 goat. Eid al-Fitr, I don't know if I said that right. It's another Muslim holiday that they'll eat goat. So those those change due to I think is it the lunar calendar? I can't remember which one they use, but it changes. So you can't depend on just one date like Christmas, like we do our Western Christmas every year. These dates change for the especially for the Muslim holidays. So you got to kind of watch that.
That's a good point. I know we have an ethnic market here, but I never thought about looking at sort of their calendar as part of your meat production and looking at that way as when you should have animals ready for market.
Right. And it, a lot of it's October, November. Summertime, there's not as good a market. So in the fall and spring is when you get the best prices for goats.
Similar to a cattle market, it sounds
like. It kind of, yeah. So, and then a little bit on products. I mean, there's other things besides meat. You got milk, and cheese that people. A lot of people make soap with it and hand lotion and stuff from milk from goats or sheep. So those are some things. And you can get on our I have a website for goat production at UNL. So and then we also have a goat production basics in Nebraska guide sheet. And it's like a 4-page and it's very condensed, but it does a pretty good job of getting people started anyway. But those are some things that, and it's got some of the health and it's got when to vaccinate at different times. Because I didn't completely tell you all those, but it's in there.
I feel like some of the topics could be a whole nother episode itself, right? I mean,
I know. I was like, oh, Randy, you've just come up with unlimited ideas, right?
Yeah.
I wrote down
I have a whole deal on reproduction for both.
Yeah, and that would be
a good one.
I think a big thing. talking about reproduction across the different aspects of it. And we touched a little bit about genetics and all those things. So maybe we'll just have to come back and talk about reproduction with small ruminants.
Sounds good. Sounds good. Well, I've enjoyed talking with you guys today. And so anytime, I've got a whole bunch of production facts and things that we could do at another time. But I think we're probably getting past our time. So
we're doing good. So thank you so much for joining us today, Randy. Hopefully our listeners found this informative and it'll be useful to them. Also, if you have not done so already, please be sure to fill out our feedback fest to let us know your thoughts about this podcast so we know what you'd like to hear more of. That's how we got Randy on. We know we have like several emails, people asking about having someone who does small ruminants. So thanks, Randy, again.
Yeah.
Thank you guys. Appreciate it. Nice to meet you.
Yes, nice to meet you. Thank you. And for those listening, make sure to follow us on our social media pages, the Livestock Fallout Livestock Extension Group, if you haven't already, and be sure to visit the UHCTAR Extension website and the University of Nebraska Extension. We'll put those links in our show notes for you, and also our YouTube channel, which will be listed in the show notes.
Thanks for listening to the Livestock Val. Before we go, show some love for your favorite podcast. That's us, by the way, by leaving us a review anywhere you're listening to this, and then stay tuned for next month.
And thanks again to our sponsors, the Western Extension Risk Management Education Center, USD, NEFA, the Livestock Extension Group, and CTAR, and the University of Nebraska Lincoln Center for Ag Profitability. Mahalo for listening.
Ahui ho.